Moving on to another story. The implementation of Nigeria's federal government's 500 billion naira social intervention programs for the unemployed, poor and vulnerable members of the society has received knocks from the Senate due to what it terms a poor implementation strategy.
Now, the senators have urged President Muhammadu Buhari to reorganize the beneficiary selection process of the program to include manual registration and not just online registration.
Borno State particularly, and some states in the northeast, are not only offline but are almost off-land. Some of us are displaced all over the country.
We have received some communication from Nigerians that are saying that why don't we share this money into 770 something local governments, that it will translate to 600 million per local government, and that cottage industries, education and health can be rejuvenated. While this might be a good talk, the issue is that of implementation.
Let's domicile this thing into state. Let's get the people to register. Even if the World Bank wants to come, they can send their people to the local government headquarters. How do you ask people to come and register from a place I'm representing like the Iwajowa in Nigeria, where there's no even network for ordinary telephone?
Urge the federal government to take another look at the 500 billion intervention program to incorporate manual registration of beneficiaries from all wards and local governments in the country. Those in favor of prayer want to say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it.
Yeah, the eyes have it there.
The eyes have it. You know, somebody once said, you know, why do we just go on as if we're really at par with the developed world, you know, where you actually expect the poorest of the poor to be able to register online?
Yeah, exactly. Those are some of the challenges, because the point there is we know these things work in the developed world. But here we have, in as much as we want to bring people who are vulnerable and people who are very poor up somewhere, but there are strategies, there are processes that are supposed to, so that you capture the people you are actually supposed to capture in this. But we'll get into all of that. Yes. Joining us now is social commentator Great Imo. It's good to have you join us right now.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Now, the Social Intervention Fund was a political promise. It's a campaign promise that the government brought on board, and a lot of Nigerians were happy when they heard of that. But here we are right now with government deciding to commence the process. You have been following this issue, and a lot of people say, well, what is going to be the criteria? What is going to be the process? How simple is it going to be, and all of that? What has been your disposition to the whole process that we're looking at?
Well, let me start by saying that it is a good idea for government to set aside some certain funds to help cushion the effects of recession, and to also help jumpstart some cadres of citizens to help them to sustain over a period of time. There is nothing permanent about this, and if the whole idea is a great idea. And the only thing that happens in our own sphere is that you discover that the implementation strategies are usually bad. And for me also, the challenge here is that those who are coming forward now to criticize were those who when the budget was presented to them, they saw these items in the budget. Some of these questions should have been asked. Why wait until we are at the implementation stage before you begin to raise these issues? That means you're still going to delay them more. I mean, we should be careful lest people begin to think that you're playing politics. Because especially for Mr. President and the governing party, the APC, if you have promised these as far back as 2014, 2015, whilst you were campaigning, that means that you had a plan on how you're going to implement. That means you had your strategy. And then when you forwarded it to the Senate as part of the budget for the year, the Senate should have asked questions. How are you going to get this done? How could the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria pass a budget without knowing details, what you want to spend it for? And meanwhile, We have a re-strategized policy rather than the envelope policy, budgeting policy. We now have we have zero budgeting, whereby every item on the list is uploaded. Therefore, members of the committee that are in charge of this should have been able to ask this question.
So who do you now blame? Is it the Senate or even the executive that in the first place pushed? Okay, I will land with my question when we come back from this break. We have a break to go on right now. Stay with us.
All right, if you're just joining us, you're watching TVC Breakfast, and on this segment we are discussing the proposed social intervention program by the federal government of Nigeria, where about 5,000 naira will be given to the very poor and the very vulnerable persons in the society. We have in the studio Great Imo. He is a social commentator, and we have been discussing this. Now, Ngozi, you had a question you were coining for him before.
Absolutely, and my question was, exactly who is it to blame, for this, well, for lack of a better word, shoddy, budget presentation that left out the details, the nitty-gritty of a program like the social intervention program that now the Senate is now, asking questions as to, the thoroughness or the soundness of this program.
Actually, it's a shared responsibility here. There is expected role performance both for the legislature and the executive in everything that affects the citizen. And even the citizens themselves have roles to play. There is some level of criteria requirements to get all these things done. The state government has its own blame, local government has its own blame. Knowing these peculiarities in their state, they should have also been proactive by, when these things were being meted, you were supposed to come forward with the fact that, in my local government, there is no telecommunication. And even without being told, you can also set up a process at a community-based level to aggregate the number of persons you want, knowing what is due to your local government, to your state. You should also develop data at that level. And
that's the real issue now. You just touched on the most vital aspect.
There is no data, both from the local government level to the federal level. At the time, the Vice President said that they were working with Bill and Melinda Foundation and some other non-governmental organizations. For me, that sounded high up there because the systems that you require to deliver this process must be localized. I accept the fact that right now our people are not up to par in terms of communication and the use of gadgets, but we should not also continue in that line. We should come off it. A nation like ours should stop being cowards. We should look our situation in the face and begin to find solutions. For how long are we going to stay without doing electronic voting? If people can, a lot of people now can make calls. It's just because of the challenges we're having now, maybe in the places like Northeast, where we are facing, where we are actually fighting a war. If you don't know fighting a war, there's chaos in that region. So you can expect that over 30 million people are not properly settled, and that means a lot to the populace. If you have 180 million population and 30 million of those population are not properly set, it means a lot. So you need to have come up with a project, a program that captures that peculiar circumstance. So they didn't do that. Those in the budget office, the civil servants as well. The civil servants, once the president meets an idea, or when the ruling party meets an idea, it behoves on those who are behind the scene, those who are the back-end people, to begin to think about it. Is this possible? So that when you are meeting with the ministers, the executive, you already have what's on the table to offer in terms of advice. Oh, Mr. Minister, we have learned that your party or your government want to do this. This is not going to be possible considering this and this and this.
So now that government says it is ready to implement this program, is this dead on arrival? Is it going to fall flat on its face? Because number one, the real foundation here, which is data that you talked about. Do we even have data to actually identify or determine who is where, how poor they are, how vulnerable they are? And when government says this will be for people, married people, for their children and all of that, does it mean the single, poor single people will be left out of this program? You know, all of those questions.
Well, there's the critical point factor. You understand me? The critical point factor is what do you do that will affect the race positively? I mean, looking at it for younger people, it may not be necessary. And the kind of, though there is a stimulus package that includes them in the 500 billion, which is the education, volunteer, and all that volunteer job. And it's situated in the way it's supposed to be community-based arrangement, not for those of us who want to come to the city, who want to make it sharp. But for those who are ready to go through process, who are ready to grow gradually, you know, to build their life. You live in a community, in a typical community like mine, in a village. You're a teacher who walks 5 minutes to 10 minutes to your teaching place, and you earn 30,000 on a volunteer level. What that means is because it's volunteer payment, government does not have what they call, it does not continue to be a burden on government. So that's why it's an intervention. But that 30,000 means something for a man living in a village compared to somebody living in Lagos. Whether you live in a hut or you live in one room, but at least with a 10,000 budget, you can actually say, okay, I buy rice. That single individual can affect 5 more people. So if you are giving to 200,000 people for a start, and maybe 500,000 on the long run,
1 million in this case,
by 500 on the 500, it means a lot. For the very 5,000 for the very vulnerable poor, it will also go a long way. Let's say that should be targeted actually at the very vulnerable poor, the older persons who can no longer fend for themselves, people who are physically challenged, and maybe age is not even also their side.
One other question yes, we would like to ask here is, if you go to you're mentioning the villages.
Yeah.
Now I've taken a trip to some villages, and then you get to see in a home.
Yes.
Sometimes you have one man, 2 wives, and about 7 children. And all these children fall in a bracket of they have left school and they've not gotten a job. So in this kind of program, is it going to take care of the father, the mother, the 2 wives, and the 7 children, or is it just going to be one out of the entire family?
That's actually funny. You know, I'm sitting here imagining that a man who goes to marry 2 wives is actually living in luxury. I'm telling you.
But you find a lot of those in the villages anyway.
Honestly, as much as we want to solve social problems, we are not here to encourage people to live above their means. Because to be married to 1 wife may be a necessity, but when you start getting married to 2 of my kind of beautiful sisters,
or even maybe 3 wives,
you are living in luxury. And I don't think that social intervention should be focused on characters like that.
Okay, we'll come back to that anyway. Issues here right after we bring you this, some of these facts. One of the campaign promises of the Muhammadu Buhari administration is the social intervention program, conceived as a palliative measure to touch the lives of Nigerians, especially the unemployed and the poor.
Now, the Nigerian government provided 500 billion naira for the social intervention programs in 2016 budget. 5% of the 500 billion naira has been released, and that is 25 billion naira. Now, the release of another 40 billion naira for the program is underway. Let's see the intervention programs.
Now, the homegrown school feeding program aims to provide a meal for pupils in school. The target is 5.5 million primary school pupils in all Nigerian states. The Nigerian government will be responsible for primary 1 to 3 pupils, while states will take charge of primary 4 to 6.
11 states are fully ready to start, and the first phase will feed 3.5 million school children. Now, the second program is the Empower Job Scheme, which is focused on job creation. This will cater for 500,000 university graduates who will be trained as teachers, agricultural workers, and also as health support workers. They were deployed to local governments, or local communities rather, and will receive a monthly stipend of 30,000 naira for 2 years.
Now, 200,000 beneficiaries have been selected in the first phase. The third is the Conditional Cash Transfer, CCT, to the poorest and most vulnerable Nigerians, a total of 1 million in the first year. That's really the aspect we're looking at, this morning. They will be given 5,000 naira monthly over a period of 2 years. You want to do the math, the math?
The math. Well, we'll get to do the math if you have your calculators.
I'll see if I can perform some magic.
Fine. Now, the fourth is the Enterprise Promotion Program, which is a loan scheme that will be handled by the Bank of Industry. that 1.4 million people, including market women, traders, artisans, small businesses and youth, will be given loans ranging from 10,000 naira to 100,000 with a repayment period of 3 to 6 months and administration cost of about 5%.
Okay, all right. Before I go on with that, it will cost about 1 trillion naira in 1 year to give 5,000 naira to 25 million Nigerians.
Okay,
that's a math.
That's a chunk.
Okay.
Okay,
so now,
thanks for doing that.
Yes.
Oh, that's good.
The federal government
I have
has
a calculator in you there.
Okay, the federal government has already budgeted 500 billion naira in the 2017 spending plan for the continuation of the program. Now, how will the federal government ensure that the social intervention doesn't go the way of subsidy, reinvestment, and empowerment program
called the Shorty?
Shorty.
Remember the
yes,
story
a very
of
good
Shorty?
question.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah. Actually, that is actually the concern of every Nigerian and anybody who wishes Nigeria well. I know at the heart of subsidy most times is corruption. I mean, politicians, when they are given any slight opportunity, may take advantage of such intervention policies to swindle the public, and that is where we must also be careful. I have actually advocated that we should have rather than subsidize corruption consumption by any means, subsidize productivity.
Is that what this will be?
This is a subsidy of kind.
Subsidizing consumption.
You are subsidizing consumption here, but the only thing that makes it very positive is that, for example, the school intervention, the feeding program is tied to local content. That is absolutely correct, and we should not stop at government, federal government making the policy. Like I say, those other component units of the state, they are lacking behind. Everybody keeps looking at President Buhari. We don't think and ask what are the governors doing to follow with the policy of federal government to bring them, to domesticate them. For example, now, the man sitting in Abuja is not going to monitor how a food cooked in Utueke, whether it means standard or not. And I can bet you the local government chairman does not have all that time. Even the councillor does not have all that time to leave legislative buildings to go to primary school every day. The community people should take responsibility. That is the proliferate ownership. When policies are made and they do not attract what they call voluntary involvement and what they call enforcement of citizenry, it doesn't go anywhere. Like you're policing a nation. No amount of police officers can adequately secure a nation. It is when the people get involved in issuing information, in asking questions, in monitoring the environment, observing this. Policy has been made.
They are the real stakeholders.
In my village, who is going to be cooking the food? The food that your children will eat. You should be interested in how it is eaten. The community should have a committee. They should work in, unexpectedly on these schools to know what is happening, what our kids eating. But we have this undecent sense of entitlement. People want something from government. We don't ask ourselves, what is our role? That was why this young man who died, Colonel Ali, I so eulogize him because we need Nigerians who are committed to Nigeria, who don't just think of what do I get. Everybody should know that yes, the presidency or the executive may have made a policy that is good, but that it alone, they alone cannot drive. Everyone needs to come on board. What is the role that we can play to make sure it gets done? Because absolutely it's a good idea. And since it has already been budgeted for, if you don't get it implemented, somebody will eat the money.
But with the way the structure is, how, even if you really you had the intention, to take part in this as a stakeholder at the communal or community level, your hands are tied.
How? This is where
how do you get yourself
the
involved?
Civil society,
yes,
they are major key players in nation building, and they are not their position in society development is not in contest. They are not. They are the actual owners. They are the people. They are not supposed to wait until government says come and do.
Yeah, but
you can challenge government to produce details on this matter. But
the
Freedom
point
of Information Act is there.
Yeah.
From which you can actually request details and you get them, and you also follow up on implementation.
Yeah, but the point there is when you're coming up with a program.
Yes.
You have specified the agencies that should be involved in carrying out this program from the beginning to the end. And the provision also has been made for those agencies and those individuals and those officers who are going to be involved in all of that, as to the stipend, as to the cost of their involvement and all of that.
Yes.
That when you make when you volunteer yourself, I want to be a part of this, whether you like it or not, because one way or the other, parents who, like you mentioned earlier on, community, they should be concerned what kind of food their children are eating in the school when they get there, and all of that. But when you want to be a part of it, and in the long run, some people are going to talk about the fact that, well, it also cost me to be part of this, and then I'm going to start demanding that I be taken care of too.
In fact, it actually should be part of the social intervention package. The government, in fact, let me say this to you, it appears that government in Nigeria have not understood that funding, the civil society is a key factor to development. Yes, you're not always going to be there. They need some level of grants for the job they do. Their jobs are not permanent jobs, but you need to encourage them. If you're serious about development, you know that when you do make these policies, you're not going to be there to monitor them. And the individuals who are supposed to run them, sometimes behind their mind is how to, how to loot what you have put in for. You need to empower all those independent bodies who don't have strings attached. You have to go monitor this thing. It is part of the empowerment. You can actually make certain funds available for non-governmental, and even foreign bodies should also be encouraged to support agencies and what they call non-governmental organizations that are seen to the effective monitoring of this. They should build a line of a network, a chain of command to begin to monitor all this. It is necessary.
All right, great. We'll come back to this. Let's go on a break, and then we'll come back. And don't forget, we just have a few minutes before the news update. Ndi will be here to take us there. But let's go on a break now. Breakfast, and on the segment we've been talking about the social intervention program in Nigeria. We have a great Imo with us in the studio talking about this. Now, if we have to go back to some of our earlier discussions, not today, that we've been talking about, we know that Nigeria has a huge infrastructure deficit.
Very much.
And my calculator here, Ngozi, give us
Not that I was that good in maths in school.
No, but you just did something for me now. So let me go by you. Now, she gave us a calculation of about 1 trillion naira annually that would go into all of that. If we sink 1 trillion naira into roads, into some of these, strictly into some of these social, and we're able to allow the trickle-down effect, the multiplier effect of picking up the economy, wouldn't that be a little more impactful than the social money given out?
Actually, I think along that line that left to me, the 1 trillion that is actually made for 25 million vulnerable poor is a good idea for government to pursue. That's to show that government has the people at heart, and they are looking out for a very quick way from which they can help ameliorate the sufferings of the people to help them pick up their peace and places. But going forward, I want to believe that if this money, this subsidy is what they call production tailored, it would have gone a long way. It would have gone a long way. Imagine we expanding 1 trillion and under a PPP arrangement, we could partner with private sector, both home and foreign, to establish corporate farm settlements that will take our youth on the streets, further create employment, so that those youths who are working there also can be, can also support the family system, which is also subsidy in the long run. And then when they support the family, the person who makes gari, who plants who go in the village, they can also be part of empowering them. So that trickles down. Honestly, I would have appreciated if such an amount is sunk into productive venture. That is not to say that it's not a good idea. It's just because of what we have available, the amount of resources available to the nation now. You have just talked about infrastructural deficit. Nigeria is actually about 69 trillion infrastructurally deficient by now, and that means we need a huge lot of funds, but we can bridge the gap. There are, this common sense thing to do is not to reinvent the wheel. There are societies that have come through this process that have done better, that have gone speedily. We need
that
to
we can
improve
actually
speed.
learn some of
yes, there are
from
so
their
many
mistakes too.
I've met people who tell you private sector can be allowed, foreign investors can be allowed to develop our infrastructure. We don't actually need for all the federal government's resources to do all of that, both from the local government and the state level. But what is challenging is that you need to develop systems, you need to have data, you need to have structure that is foolproof, because right now Nigerians keep being smart, keep trying to alter systems that except you make them foolproof, so that when individuals are coming to invest in our economy, they are not buying over our society. We are not tying our children's future to their apron. We should be able to say that, okay, this thing is, you are going to build this rail line, 1,000 kilometers at this amount. These are somebody buy the coaches. Government is part investor by providing the land.
Yes.
You build the rail. Somebody else, private investors in Nigeria like banks can buy coaches. Even my Igbo brothers who are into transport, if you may not be able to buy 2 coaches, you can buy 1.
So which means
the
fixation,
your trailer business to coach buying.
Great.
And you're part of the system.
The fixation on foreign direct investment.
Yes.
All this talk about wanting to attract foreign investment to revive the economy.
Yeah.
How about, they say charity begins at home.
Yes.
How can the Nigerian investor, the local investor, be attracted to whatever government is putting out there?
That is
what
important.
does government need to do?
Well, number
Seriously.
one, the job of government is to create policies, to make policies, to give direction, to make the vision clear, so that everybody knows where we're going, and then then how to carry the people along to deliver on that vision. That is key. And also going forward, the system we need to develop. For example, I've been hearing of agricultural intervention funds and all of that. Government, CBN is giving money for anchor borrower and all of that. But what we don't know is that even when monies are expended for all this kind of agriculture, how do they ensure that they get around? How do you ensure that when the rice Lagos State is planting with Kebbi State gets to Lagos, that the people who will get them at that subsidized rate? The only thing you need to do, the government also needs to use its power and position to create off-takers companies. For example, off-taker companies that will have a value chain, that will create franchise from the community to local government to state to federal. So whatever you are planting in your various community can be aggregated and distributed in a well-packaged form that it gets everywhere. Maximizing what is available to our environment, making sure that the demand on Naira and the pressure on Naira is reduced. Then once we cover in that, whatever investment that is coming also, there's also a huge knowledge gap. Some of the infrastructure, the deficit we have, to develop those infrastructures, I can tell you that we don't have the technical competence to do a lot of that. It's a big problem.
Isn't that where
to build roads,
isn't that where such
companies are not
isn't that where such monies should be, targeted at real capacity, education for the masses of young people, able-bodied young people? That is why I also
applaud this intervention in terms of volunteer teachers. We should have 200,000 people who are graduates, quality minds, who are properly trained about how to deliver knowledge. They are teaching younger people. That is the fastest way you can infuse. So you are helping both ends. You are giving the younger person who is looking for a job hope, to something to hold on to take care of his family and to take his mind away from crime. And while you're also using the opportunity to invest his mind on the younger generation.
All right, great. Timo, we'll have to say thank you so much. It's been such a delight having you on the show this morning. Great Imo, social commentator.
Thank you.